Frank Martin is shown sitting in his car at the start of the film. He stops his alarm before starting his car. Frank pulls over in front of a palace after a while of driving. Suddenly, 4 burglars exit the area and sit in Frank's vehicle. Frank was instructed to begin driving. In response, Frank informs them of the deal by stating that he was only instructed to pick 3 individuals weighing 254 kilos and that he will only transport those 3 men since he didn't want to get caught. The robber in the front seat put his gun on Frank's temple while he was trying to explain himself, and since the robber had no other option, he shot one of his own guys and threw him out of the car. Following this, Frank starts his car and discovers a large number of police officers pursuing them in their vehicles. Frank maintains his effectiveness in eluding capture and misleading police officers because of his excellent driving skills. He then drives them to a mountain's crest as per the deal. The robbers implored Frank to drive them to Avignon in return for more money, but he declines the proposition. They then exits Frank's car and move to the car that was already parked at the top of the hill. Frank then returns to his house and started replacing the license plate on his vehicle. Furthermore, he also washed his car to remove any evidence of his involvement in the incident. An inspector, Tarconi, stops by Frank's residence and asks him a blunt question that did he drive his car today. Frank declines by saying that he won't be able to drive until the authorities give him the go-ahead. Moreover, he explains that in order to unravel the mysteries of an ongoing case, he must visit several places. Tarconi then queries Frank about seeing a 1999 black BMW, exactly the same as the one Frank has. In addition, Tarconi informs him that he must locate it since it belonged to a well-known Mafia figure who had assisted the 4 Italian robbers to flee from the castle after they had stolen substantial valuables. Following his understanding, Tarconi grinned and told Frank that whatever he does it subtly and without leaving any traces. With that said, Tarconi departs. Later, Frank receives a call instructing him to meet at a bar. When Frank arrives, a man instructs him to deliver a bag weighing 50 pounds to the house of a rival Mafia leader, Darren. Frank confronts the man for further delivery details and writes it down on a piece of paper. After writing the details, he burned the page and walks away. Frank then waits in his car as 2 individuals arrive and place a sealed bag weighing 250 pounds into his car's trunk. Frank started his car and goes to his way to deliver the package, but later discovers a flat tire. He stops his car and walks over to the back. One of his rules for executing the task is to never open any delivery bags, so even though he sees the package moving there, he ignores it. He simply fetches his tire and replaces it. Later, he tends to continue his journey. He makes a halt along the route to have breakfast. Frank purchases a bottle of juice before leaving the store and drives off with it. On a deserted highway, Frank turned off his car engine and gets out. He unlocks his trunk and opens the bag zipper. Inside the bag, he discovered a girl tied up. He cuts a hole in her duct tape to make her drink some water and after that, closes the zip once more and keeps on driving. Although he has made the girl drink some water to prevent her from dehydration, yet she keeps on banging the trunk's roof. Because of the agitating noise, Frank stops his car once more and opens the truck. She then requests him to at least let her take a washroom break. Seeing no choice, Frank agrees on her request, but only gives her 1 minute to get free. For insurance, Frank ties a rope around her neck to prevent her from running away. After some time, when she didn't arrive back, Frank goes in the bushes to check on her. He soon understands that he was scammed. Somehow, Frank manages to find and catch her back. Then he lifts her onto his shoulders and carries her back to the car. He assaults and knocks down the 2 police officers after they witness the entire incident. The following scene shows Darren, who is a rival Mafia Don. He queries Frank as to whether the package has been opened, but he lied that he never opened the package. After paying Frank for his work on this job, Darren asks him to do another task for him. Frank inquiries the man about the delivery address without posing any additional questions. Then Darren gives Frank a briefcase. After getting it, Frank departs to make the delivery and stops once more along the route for food. He grabs 2 beers for the policeman he had kidnapped earlier as he leaves the store. As he got closer to his car, it suddenly exploded. Despite the crucial death of both police officers, Frank is unharmed because he was at a significant distance from it. After some thinking, Frank remembered that Darren gave him a suitcase that contained a bomb. He got furious and goes to Darren's house and assaults his bodyguards in an effort to steal a car to make up for his loss. Frank sits in one of Darren's car and escaped by going straight through a wall. He soon discovered that the same girl which he delivered to Darren is also in the car. He then immediately stops the car and leaves her in the middle of the road, but later thinks bad for her and returns to take her with him to his house. Later, Darren pays a visit to one of his bodyguards who is badly wounded because of the fight. He inquires him about the cause of the altercation, which in response his bodyguard takes Frank's name. Unexpectedly, Darren explodes with wrath over the fact that Frank is still alive despite being dispatched to deliver a bomb. Later, after making sure the police are not around, Darren kills the bodyguard. The following scene shows Lai preparing breakfast for Frank. She then goes to the front door to get the milk, and it's there that she first encounters Tarconi. When Tarconi asks who she is, she introduces herself as Frank's maid. Following that, Tarconi enters the home and invites Frank to join him for a cup of coffee. Tarconi pulls out Frank's destroyed license plate. Frank admits that it belongs to him, and then he asks him about his car. Tarconi responds that he should know where it is. Frank states that someone broke into his garage and took his car while he was out shopping. Later, he clarifies his remarks by indicating that he was about to report the incident to the authorities this morning. Tarconi, who is suspicious, confronts Frank as to how he managed to return to his residence, given the great distance between the store and his house. Lai immediately responds that she provided him with a ride. He adds a new question to the list by asking how she managed to operate a vehicle in absolute darkness. Lai responds inanely by explaining that she gave Frank a ride since she thought he was nice. Without obtaining any evidence to use against Frank, Tarconi exits and informs him that he is unaware of his occupation outside of auto theft. Frank laughed and said he would let Tarconi know as soon as he has a profession. Lai informs Frank that Tarconi is pursuing him and not her, but Frank claims her that he will soon come up with a solution. Frank also claims that his life was good until the day she arrived. She instantly apologizes to Frank, when suddenly a missile is fired towards Frank's home, destroying his whole mansion. Numerous armed individuals entered the house and started firing at Frank and Lai. Even though the entire house blows up, they manage to escape through a hidden route under Frank's house. They both experience adoration for one another after avoiding death, hence they end up having their time. Lai and Frank visit the police station the following day, where Tarconi investigates their whereabouts. Frank responds by stating that they went to the beach at the time of this incident. In addition, Tarconi notes that the cops discovered 5,000 bullets in front of their property. Tarconi also probes Frank towards a possibility as to whether he has a foe. In response, Frank states that he is totally unaware of the attack. Tarconi leaves the cabin after finishing the investing. Upon Tarconi's exit, Lai extracts all the data about Darren from Tarconi's computer. He returns later and gives them some cash as well as his brother's hotel card. Frank begins to walk on his own while Lai accepts the offer. She stops Frank by saying to come with her, but Frank disagreed. Lai then told him the truth that 400 people are trapped in a container which are going to be smuggled. In addition, she also tells him that his father and sister are also in that container. Her father will be made into a slave once it departs today. Only Darren is aware of its number. She also reminds him of his obligation to save those individuals as a soldier. The next scene takes place in Darren's office, where Lai and Frank are holding him captive. Lai is informed by Darren that her father would soon be in this office. He was ultimately correct. Like Darren, Mr. Kawai is a human trafficker. When Kawai walks into the room, he sees his daughter standing there with a gun pointed against him. Lai is compelled to put down her weapon and surrender. They also attacks Frank and knocks him down. Following the arrival of the police, Darren informs Tarconi that Frank has kidnapped Lai and that they had to attack him. Tarconi then orders to take Frank under arrest. While Frank was being held behind the bars, he is forced to reveal the whole truth to Tarconi, and he also informs Tarconi of the container that is smuggling 400 citizens. Frank continues by saying that if he can just escape from this cell, he will be able to save those 400 Chinese citizens in less than 12 hours. Frank and Tarconi set up an escape scenario where Frank holds a gun to Tarconi's head in front of everyone. He is eventually successful in leaving the prison with Tarconi's assistance. Frank then drives to a small boat where he departs from Tarconi. Frank follows the container through that tiny ship until he locates it precisely. Here, Frank engages Darren's men in a fierce duel and using his ultimate fighting skills against them. When more guards arrives, Frank is forced to jump into the water. When Darren's men notice this, they set the water on fire, but Frank is still able to escape by finding a car. Even though he encounters mechanical issues on the way to the container, he manages to spot a plane and follows it. Then, using a revolver, he approaches the owner of the plane and commands him to fly him to the container. Frank is able to land on the container using a parachute and succeeds in killing the driver. Again, there is a great deal of fire, and Darren pushes Frank out into the street. Frank makes great effort to avoid being struck by the ground, and ultimately manages to go up and tosses Darren out of the truck. Frank drives the truck to a beach, where Mr. Kawhi is able to take Frank out of the vehicle, and then corners him to the edge of the mountain. He then tells Frank that he and Lai will both die today. Suddenly, Lai shoots her father in the back, killing him. Frank tries to comfort her by giving her an embrace. In addition, Tarconi shows up and releases all the 400 hostages. This brings us at the end of the movie, as Lai finally gets to see her sister. Subscribe to see more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.